a strategy that I've used before and I'm currently using is, I'm within VFAT. I'm depositing my stablecoin pools every week. Maybe I'm taking the yields, the AERO yields, depositing them here within Moonwell, and then once you've deposited, you can borrow USDC at a rate of 2.9%. And then I just throw those right back in some of those yield farming pools where I'm getting.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Wagmi TV. Market's, kind of in a little bit of a limbo right now, so we'd figure we'd bring you a new Aerodrome update. The good news is, whether the market's up, whether the market's down, in DeFi, there's always a way to make money. So we're going to take you through some of the most recent technical analysis on the AERO token, and then we're going to take you through one of the strategies that we're actually using to farm via Aerodrome. So excited to get into it. As always, none of this is financial advice, and I'll kick it over to Mata for the TA.
Yeah, let's dig into it. So chart looks pretty ugly, right? As we kind of have seen across the entire crypto market, right? I know we really had a range up here that I believe kind of ended right around this 87-ish cent mark or so. We've clearly broken down from that, right? I think that kind of had some hopes that Bitcoin would eventually surge up from this downtrend that it's been in. Obviously, we've broken down from it. We're kind of seeing a little bit of sideways chop here to a little bit downwards. So what we do have is a pretty sturdy support line here down in yellow from the big dump out. We saw a really nice reversal that pretty much took back the entire losses from that day back at the beginning of July. We've since seen a run up, and then it's obviously come back down in from that as well. So solid support line down around the 39-40 cent level. What we do have is a wedge here. And so what we don't know is what sort of wedge this is. So wedge is typically, you can think of it as like a winding coil, right? As it gets closer and closer to the end here, whichever way it breaks, you're likely going to see a pretty large move in that direction. So what we're hoping for is a break above this wedge, a retest of it, and then we can go and test some of these resistance lines that we'll see here in a second. What we don't want to see if we're bullish on Aerodrome from a technical perspective is for it to break down from this wedge in a downward trend. Then we would definitely think to see this around that 39 to 40 cent level, and hopefully it'd get a bounce there. But like I mentioned, we do have these couple of orange lines, which are essentially our resistance lines here moving forward. You got a little bit of resistance up here at the 60 cent level if it can bounce off of this bottom range of the wedge. And then if it can break out of that, we have some resistance at 75. What I would imagine would happen if we break above this to the upside, we'd hit that 75, 74-ish mark, pull back slightly, and then come up to retest some of these levels back in the dollar range. The only other thing I was seeing on here was if we pull up RSI, which we've looked at a couple times with Aerodrome specifically, what we typically like to see are bullish divergences. So what you can see is from here on August 5th down to more recently here, September 1st, and even a little bit close to today, we're seeing an actual, we're seeing a downward movement in the RSI. But what we also see is that price is actually higher from the lows here. So we're seeing higher highs in price and lower lows or higher lows in price and lower lows on the RSI, which is typically a bullish signal. So what I would imagine happens is we get the inevitable bounce off of this wedge, which takes us up at least to this resistance line, which is about 15 or so percent. But the major resistance is going to be around that 23% move from where we're at right now. So again, long story short, we're in a wedge pattern. We're not quite sure which direction it's going to move from a technical perspective. Whenever it does break out of this, it'll probably have a fairly significant move in one direction or the other. So to stay bullish, we want to make sure we're not closing below this wedge line. But that's simply from the technical perspective, right? I know especially a lot of the folks on here are more long-term oriented for Aerodrome. So always important to talk through kind of the fundamentals of what some of these projects and coins look like. So that's what we'll cover next for some of those long-term folks who aren't necessarily solely focused on kind of the short-term price action.
And really quick, Mata, on that graph, you had that yellow line as kind of like that bottommost resistance that we're seeing. What number is that at?
Yeah, that's right around the 39.40 level is
Okay.
what you're going to get some solid support on. So really the low back from July 5th when we saw
Okay.
that big dump out. Yeah.
That's good. Good to know. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, let's hop into some of the stablecoin strategies. Obviously with Aerodrome, you can yield farm on a ton of different tokens. And so that's, ETH based with some of the more volatile assets, or stablecoins, which is the ones we really like to cover on this channel. And I think sometimes when we're running through these different stablecoin pools, we have a tough time showing you guys really the best pools that you should be looking at. And how we do that is, one, we first prioritize TVL. You want to be able to get in and out of those positions, right? And so low TVL pools, like an $800 pool, or honestly like $5,000, that's not great. You're looking in the millions here to really move in and out without a ton of price action. And so this, $1.5 million pool, good enough pool for you to be able to move funds in and out of. Unfortunately, the Aerodrome page doesn't allow for filtering on those types of numbers. And so what I wanted to show was this other application, which, if you're within the Aerodrome Discord, it gets mentioned a good amount, but it's called vfat.io. And really what this is it's a farming aggregator for different one chains, like L2s. You can farm across L2s. You can also farm across different platforms. And so what I want to do really quick is to pull up the Aerodrome stablecoin pools that are kind of in that range of TVL that we like. So here, this is in thousands. So I'll put the minimum TVL of 1 million. I'll click on the Aerodrome icon, also base and stable. And so what we'll have here is really some of the pools that you want to be looking for to be able to get in and out of with your assets. And these include DOLA, USDC, USDZ, USDC, some of the other ones we've covered on this channel, like USDC Plus. And so these are all great stablecoin pools to be farming, and you can filter on APR. And so you're seeing really the highest, kind of most secure pools that you want to be getting into right now are just below 20%. That's a little lower than the yields we saw maybe a month or two ago. So we're seeing that price action have its effect on the yields within the Aerodrome platform. But yeah, so something I wanted to share was maybe another strategy you could do if you're trying to accumulate AERO long term. Sometimes you feel like you're losing or getting inflated away because of the amount of new distributions of AERO every epoch or every week. And so a strategy that you could use here is, obviously depositing within, let's say, this MSUSD USDC pool. The nice thing about this platform is it does like the distributions for you, so you don't have to have the exact amount of coins needed. And then when you withdraw your AERO, what you can do is you can actually hop over here to Moonwell. And if you're unfamiliar with Moonwell, Moonwell is a borrowing and lending platform on Base. And what you can do is obviously, supply your AERO token and then borrow against that, maybe borrow USDC against that. And so what I really wanted to focus on here was on the right side of the screen here, the APY that you can get for supplying your AERO. So you can get 30% APY on just holding AERO and supplying to this platform. Within Aerodrome, you can farm some of the AERO pools, but you never know how that money is going to be used. Sometimes, your AERO tokens get distributed into the other token that is part of that pool. And so if you really just want to make sure you're holding onto your AERO and you're earning yield on that, this is also a great place to do that. And so, yeah, a strategy that I've used before and I'm currently using is, I'm within VFAT. I'm depositing my stablecoin pools every week. Maybe I'm taking the yields, the AERO yields, depositing them here within Moonwell. And then once you've deposited, you can borrow USDC at a rate of 2.9%. And then I just throw those right back in some of those yield farming pools where I'm getting, on the low end, 9%. Obviously, this is not financial advice. Make sure you're doing your own research with the different assets and the different pools that you're hopping into. But this is a way to combat some of that inflation that happens with the AERO token, is to hop over here, stake it, and well, that's the borrow APY, but the supply APY is 30%, and feel like you're not really being inflated away. So do you got any comments on that? I know you've done some lending and yield farming in the past, but yeah, would love to hear your thoughts on that strategy.
Yeah, 100%. No, I think it's a really, really interesting strategy. So like, I mean, if we just zoom out for a little bit, right? Like when the market is kind of in the state that it's in now, it's not really in like an active risk-taking mode, right? Like this isn't an environment where, I mean, sure, you could probably ape some like low cap memes or something like that that might do well. But generally speaking, most tokens are in kind of a lull. And so this makes it a really advantageous time to farm because you can see like what Evan showed on VFAT, even on these stablecoin pools, which you're not exposed to the market at all. Of course, you're exposed to some smart contract risk and stuff, but you know, we've covered the fact that Aerodrome has had sufficient TVL for a long time. It's generally a pretty safe protocol. And you're sitting there on the base APY you're getting right there. That's already 2, 3, almost 4 times what you would get in like a traditional high yield savings account, right? Then you multiply it by the strategy that Evan just showed, and you're getting an additional 30% on top of the AERO yield that you like. If you're running the strategy, if you're on our channel, you're generally probably bullish on AERO in the first place. So you're going to be holding it for a while. And so you can compound that for additional yields on top of the base yield that you're already getting. Now, obviously, like the borrowing against the AERO and then redepositing to the pool, that's a way to leverage your returns even more. The key
Yeah.
thing that I'll highlight there is, of course, there's risks involved with that, which Evan kind of touched on. Like, make sure to do your own research. The main thing to take into account there is the liquidation level of that borrowed position, right? So if Aerodrome token price goes down a ton, there's a chance that that position could get liquidated. So it's something that you will have to actively manage versus, you know, kind of the first part of the video when we're showing the stablecoin pools. That's much more of like a passive strategy, right? Up until like that borrowing and leveraging, it's much more of a passive strategy. The moment you start borrowing against your Aerodrome, it becomes much more of an active strategy. So that's the only thing I would flag to anybody who's interested in that particular strategy. But generally, I think it's really interesting, and it just goes to show like there's always ways in DeFi to make outsized returns, no matter what the market is really doing, which is really cool, right? And so yeah, we'd love to hear kind of what you guys think about the strategy, or if you have any others.
Yeah.
Mata, you got anything else to add here before we wrap it?
I don't. Just stay safe out there, guys. I know it's a crazy, crazy market right now. A lot of news going down from a macro perspective. So stay patient. The good projects will float to the surface eventually. So just do your own research and stay diligent.
Yeah, and I think one thing I wanted to add, just piggybacking on top of what you're saying, Zoe, is that when you look at Aerodrome, the most passive way for you to gain yield on your AERO is to just lock it within the platform itself, right? And so this is always an option. Obviously, these locks are for 4 years. And so if you're concerned about that time horizon, that's what that Moonwell or other lending and borrowing services, that's what that gives you, is you can pull that out at any time. And so it's kind of an alternative to locking on the Aerodrome platform, where maybe you feel like your AERO funds are more liquid than what this option would be.
100%. 100%. Awesome, guys. So that will do it for this week. As always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We love to hear from you guys. Definitely, if you guys like kind of these farming-oriented videos, definitely let us know. We'll be happy to make more content about these sorts of strategies. And yeah, as always, you know, tune in to us for the latest on Aerodrome, as well as other DeFi projects and meme coins, technical analysis, all of the above. But for that, we'll see you next week here on Wagmi TV.